Welcome everyone across the planet to Connecting the Dots, a laser-focused quick-fire interview on food and the economy with international experts where we seek answers to questions all of us should be asking. I'm Ajay Jakhar, Chairman Bharat Krishik Samaj, Farmers Forum India, as well as the Vice Chair of Action Track 2, Shift to Sustainable Consumption Patterns at the UN Food Systems Summit. Professor Arun Kumar, eminent economist and academic who is an author of innumerable papers, articles, and books on the Indian economy, including the famous books Demonetization and the Black Economy, and the latest book that came out in December, Indian Economy's Greatest Crisis, Coronavirus, which was a bestseller on the Amazon, is here with us. We get to watch him regularly on various talk shows. We are delighted to have him with us. Welcome, Professor Arun Kumar.
Thank you
for joining us. Thank you.
Thank you.
So we'll move straight into the questions. The first question is, the Biden administration in the USA is advocating an increase in domestic corporate tax to 28%. It's also advocating a global minimum tax rate and has very clearly stated for the first time as a president of the United States that a trickle-down economic model has failed. It is known that the biggest companies in India and abroad get away with no taxation or minimum tax. What is your reaction? Should India also be contemplating something like this?
See, India is very short of resources for its development. And one of the reasons is that because globally the tax rates had come down, especially after the collapse of Soviet Union in 1990, the Soviet bloc countries in east of Europe, they lacked capital, so they started cutting the tax rates and then everybody followed soon. So that's called the race to the bottom, where everybody cut taxes, and therefore there was shortage of resources for social services like education, health, for infrastructure and so on. So India has also had the same problem. In our education sector, instead of spending 6% of GDP on public education, we've never spent more than 4%. In the case of health, where we should be spending 3% of GDP on public health, we've never crossed 1.3%. So India needs to raise more taxes. Otherwise, its deficit is very high. And the deficit is going higher and higher, especially after the pandemic. So we are very short of resources to take care of the poor. So we must also support this. And because the US is doing it, everybody else may follow suit. However, I would say that the US is going to face enormous problem from the multinationals and the international finance capital, which has been very happy at the cut in the taxes on it. So there'll be a little bit of problem. Already the World Bank managing director has said that there'll be problem, and he's shooting from the shoulder of the poor countries, saying poor countries may need to cut taxes to attract capital. But I think that's a bit of a red herring, because actually poor countries need to raise the taxes to be able to have more resources for the development of its people.
Well, that's interesting, which gets me to the second question, which is, if you look at the COVID crisis that started last year everyone was scared about their livelihoods. This year, everyone is scared about their lives. Can you summarize the state of our economy in simple terms and numbers that people understand? Where do we stand actually?
So, Indian economy suffered the most officially, if you compare the data for the 20 big economies. Our economy in the first quarter of last year, what is our fiscal year, but not the calendar year, that dropped by more than 24%, which is the largest drop of any of the top 20 economies. And the reason is we have a very large unorganized sector, which employs 94% of the workforce. And they are the ones who suffered most. Now, lockdown is not a cure for the disease, but it slows the mixing of people and therefore slows down the spread of the disease so that the health infrastructure can cope with the disease. There's something called the apex. That apex should not cross the health infrastructure of a country. Otherwise, there's chaos because people are not able to get beds, etc., which is what is happening now when our apex has crossed the health infrastructure. So the people are not able to get hospital beds, not able to get oxygen, etc. So in other words, a lockdown is very crucial, but the lockdown also means people cannot move around. And it was shown in a survey that 80% of Indians said they don't have enough savings to even ward off 1 week of loss of income. And therefore they start starving, they started migrating back. And this unorganized sector produces 45% of the output. If you take out agriculture from it, then it's about 30% of the output, and this 30% completely stopped. So therefore, my argument is that in the first quarter, Indian economy did not drop by 24.4%, but by around 50%, because in our official data, we did not include the unorganized sector. Even agriculture suffered in the first quarter because perishables from agriculture could not come to the market, like flowers and horticulture and floriculture and so on. And therefore, they started rotting in the field. So even though officially we show that the Indian economy, agriculture grew by 3%, but actually it fell by 10% in quarter one. And the same is the problem now, that as soon as we have this kind of a lockdown, at the moment it's partial lockdown. But a partial lockdown means the disease will keep spreading. And it has spread to small towns, it has spread to the rural areas where people are falling sick. And because we don't have enough testing there, we don't know how much of the disease has spread. And we don't have full data on the deaths. Even from the cities, we are only counting the deaths in the hospitals, but not at home, not in the outside of the hospital. So therefore, the reports are that the number of cremations is far more than the official data on deaths. So in other words, at this point, we are again suffering. And I think we are going to have another big fall in the economy. Last year, I think the economy fell, even though officially it was said by about 8%, but my own estimate is it fell by about 30%. And this year again is going to fall. Earlier, it was expected because of the low base of the last year that it would rise by 11, 12%. But I think that is gone because this wave is much stronger than the last wave. The fall in the economy will be much sharper also, and maybe more prolonged because we delayed the lockdown by about a month and a half. So therefore, the wave could last longer.
I think the government is in a very difficult situation because of the COVID. But if you look at the vaccination rate, if you look at Israel's population, there 2/3 of the population has been vaccinated. The country is reopening. The number of cases has come down to single digits or possibly even zero. We have delayed ordering and ramping up vaccination. Can you, leaving aside the human aspect of the tragedy, which is there because of circumstances beyond our means, or what do we say? But what is the cost benefit analysis to expenditure on giving free vaccination to everyone early, or versus savings to the economy?
I think there are several questions rolled into what you're saying. We needed to actually start, thinking about vaccination from July last year. Almost all major economies did that. They started booking the number of doses. Billions of doses were booked by the US, Canada, European countries, Britain, etc. Canada, in fact, booked 5 times the size of its population in terms of the vaccine. We did not start doing that. We did not start planning. Because if we are to reach some kind of herd immunity, and which according to earlier calculation was 60% of the population, that means of 1.4 billion, we needed 840 million to be vaccinated very quickly, which means for 2 doses, we required about 1.7 billion vaccination in short time. Now, if we assume that we are going to do it, say, even within 8 months, okay, then what we needed was some like 200 million vaccinations every month. We did not prepare for it. We did not order that many doses. We started ordering the doses in January, and then we started with about 100 million in 1.5 months. At that rate, we are not going to be able to vaccinate, even in 20 years, in which case we will never be able to get to herd immunity. We'll never be able to restart the economy. And now that the wave has taken on in a big way, we needed to have accelerated it. So starting with 100 million per month, we should have gone up to 200 million per month within a couple of months. But at this point, we are still only at about 34, 35 million. So at this rate, we'll take several years and we'll have to start revaccinating people who have been given 2 doses within a year because the immunity will not will last for more than a year, year and a half. The data still has to come. But at that rate, we'll never be able to open our economy fully because people will start falling ill, etc. So the cost of vaccination, which is estimated in India terms, if we are to give free vaccine to everybody, that may come to about $7-8 billion. But if we don't do that, then the cost would be maybe 10 times that, in terms of the economic opportunity lost, because we'll have to continue to do that. You can see the example of Brazil, which never really locked down, and its wave, the first wave merged into the second wave, and now it's having very high level of infection, and that is fully 13 months down the road. Britain, which did lock down, had first wave, which was 4 months, and the second wave, which was 8 months, and it has abated, and there, about 50% of the people have got 1 dose of the vaccine, and therefore they're now beginning to be able to open up. China started opening up 3 months later, and it has had a positive rate of growth of the economy. So we could have also done that, but delay in vaccination here in India, delay in planning for it has meant a second wave, a lot of deaths, a lot of loss of life, and therefore loss of business confidence, loss of consumer sentiment, and therefore the demand fall will continue. In which case our economy, instead of rising at 10-12%, would fall again by 20-25%. So 30-35% fall in the economy of a $3 trillion economy would be about $1 trillion. So $1 trillion loss compared to maybe a cost of $5 to $7 billion for free vaccination for everybody.
Those are very, 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 very big figures. If you come back to the Indian economy, a question that is asked is, should the government be printing money to kickstart the economy, to put in some drive into the economy, or is inflation too much of a worry?
So, what we have to see is that 94% is in the unorganized sector, and they have lost employment. As a result, demand has been down, and the organized sector, has kicked in, but it has taken demand away from the unorganized sector. So, organized sector is doing better, but the unorganized sector is doing very poorly, and therefore, demand in the economy will remain down. And if the sentiment is down because people are very uncertain about the disease, if people feel that the disease has come in a big way, every family has seen some people dying or some people very sick, so people are very, very uncertain about the future. Now, in this situation, private sector cannot kick in because private sector can only increase its output if demand is there. Now, to increase demand, therefore, the government will have to step in with public investment and giving some purchasing power to the poor people. It'll also, because at this point of time, when there's a lockdown in various parts of the country, people don't have purchasing power. So it'll also have to distribute food free to people. It'll also have to give water. It'll have to give some energy and some, a minimum thing. So government needs to really increase, its expenditures by a substantial amount, which it did not do last year. It increased the budgetary allocation only about, 1 or 2% of the GDP, which is inadequate because the loss of incomes is roughly about 20 to 25% of GDP. And therefore, much more needed to have been done. You look at the USA, last year it gave a $2 trillion package. And then, before Mr. Trump signed off another $900 billion. And then when Joe Biden came in, $1.9 trillion. So, increased by about 15% of GDP as compared to India's only 2% of GDP increase. So we need to also do that so that people can have purchasing power in their hands. And therefore, fiscal deficit will rise, which will have to be monetized, or we'll have to borrow from those who have the purchasing, those who have made a lot of money. The stock markets have risen, so the stock market needs to be taxed, certain amount of, taxation on those who made a lot of gains in this period. So there are some companies which have done very well, like in the pharma sector, in telecom sector, in the e-commerce sector, etc. And that's why the stock market has been rising. So we could tax there, raise funds, and whatever is the balance, we have to monetize. At this point, monetizing is the less, is the more desirable option rather than being a less desirable option. So we should monetize, increase the fiscal deficit, put in purchasing power. However, there's a difference. Last year, everybody was doing that. This year, many economies may not do that because they're coming out. So we could get singled out, and that could have international repercussions. But I think we need to cater to our poor people. We need to cater to the 94% of the unorganized sector. So we should do it.
Thank you. Thank you so muji, Professor Arun Kumar, for your very candid, very clear views and on these issues. And there is so much more to discuss. Maybe we'll come and take time from you again to take this conversation forward in the months to come. To all those who are watching it, a new Connecting the Dots interview is out every Thursday. Do watch and share. Stay safe and take care of yourselves, of your family, your loved ones, and definitely keep praying. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.